I am nothing. I'm nothing without her, and I'm nothing compared to her. Let's bring her on now, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, can you hear me okay? Just checking.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely hear you. Thank you. Good morning to you. How lovely it is to see you on the screen. Don't you live in my house?
Yes, I do. And the funny thing is, it looks like it's daylight where you are, and it looks like it's nighttime with this lighting that I've got.
It does. Yeah, it does. Could have tidied up. Anyway, thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone.
Isn't she lovely? 2-3 million views on Expats everywhere now, I think, is it? With your What He Didn't Tell You.
It's 300 and I think it's 330, isn't it?
Not too bad at all. That's
30,000.
That's more than any of us have done, all put together in one single video. So we thought, it's obviously an interesting and important theme to people. What he didn't tell you. That's when Josh spoke to me first of all, and the phrase "be Portuguese" came up. And I am the Portuguese Pollyanna. Positivity.
You definitely are.
Yeah, don't like to look too. I'm getting better at looking at the dark side. I mean, we're talking about death and dying, for God's sake, later on today. So I'm doing a better job than I might have been accused of doing before. But you're the one who likes to talk about mold and damp and stuff like that, aren't you? And you go there. And we thought we would make that a regular feature. So,
hey, I'm not going to be talking about mold and damp every single day.
Oh, really?
I just want to like add a little bit of levity and share some of the things, from a female perspective. Like, you guys are sort of like big picture, and often us women, without making some massive gender faux pas, we're managing, lives in a slightly different way, so I want to tell it like it is from a female perspective.
Good. Okay. So any questions for Mrs. M, for as long as she can be kept here and doesn't have to go off and make me a nice cup of tea? Let's do that. More gender trouble. Mrs. M. Yes, look at it. Mrs. M from T-Duck. Very popular this morning. Mrs. M tune sounds like Bewitched from the 70s.
It does. That's what I liked about it, Deagle. I loved it when Carl's playing me a few, and I said, that's the one I want.
Yes.
But I don't want it that long, thank you. And I'm going to change a photo on that.
That's the first time you've said that to me. Anyway.
I forgot to say, who doesn't like a bulging sack first thing in the morning?
Exactly, and I've got to do
missed that one.
It's becoming quite uncomfortable, I've got to tell you. So yes, can you wiggle your nose like is that the same series when she used to just twink? Let's just zoom in a minute.
No, I have to wiggle my mouth.
Okay, you're right, nearly then. Carl, I think you live in Mrs. M's house. Yes, correction. Yeah. Noted, thank you. And Gary, after yesterday's show, I had my first ever turkey egg. And constipated for 6 weeks now as a result. That's probably a big bad boy, Gary. First ever turkey egg, courtesy of Joelle Delicious. You can see that in our YouTube channel, of course, the YouTube library, that segment of Garvo over at the lovely Quinta das Lameiras near Tomar there. Look at this, a simple Louisa from Owen. We've got your juice of the day. It is spinach, apple, cucumber, and lemon. Mrs. M, you might like that.
I would, yeah.
Make Louisa from James as well this morning. Bon dia, Louisa. Very good. And Garvo, they are awesome animals. The turkeys can't wait to get some more after we have finished our first one. Oh my God. Morning, Munsons. From
Good morning.
And ours never get old enough to lay eggs.
Oh, wow.
No, that's ominous, isn't it?
I tell you what we've got that are really great, and they start laying straight away within 6 or 7 weeks, and that's quails. We've got a lovely little pair of quail hens, and we get eggs from them every day. Although I did tread on one last week accidentally, and it stopped laying, but hopefully it'll come back round.
Or you could say it's permanently laying in a different sense. But who doesn't like a gender faux pas in the morning? Nice one, John. Hey! And my father used to keep turkeys. He swore the eggs were amazing. I thought that was going to be a dad joke, and it kind of tailed off at the end. Well, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
I've got a friendly fly that's joined us. It's one of the
Oh,
last ones of the season, hopefully.
always happens, doesn't it?
Mm.
Just when
Look,
you, yeah, that'll get you wiggling your nose in a bewitched style. Um,
look.
so, Mrs M, what is your solution then to a mouldy basement? Do you want to address this once and for all? Then, what he doesn't tell you.
Well, you know, I'll hold my hands up and say I've never had a mouldy basement.
Hey,
It's all kept nice and clean and whatnot down there. Um,
white vinegar.
no, what I was going to say is I've missed it by a couple of days actually. You know that first sensation when you get into bed at night and you pull back the covers and all of a sudden the covers feel a bit different. They're a bit cooler suddenly. That in my estimation is the moment when you need to get your dehumidifier out
Yes.
and start using it. So like we didn't cotton on to this for a couple of years. And like basically the dehumidifier, if we run it for about 2 hours every day, it will take something like 2 liters of water out of the air. That's just how damp it
A
gets
lot of
really,
moisture.
really quickly here. I mean, this is a very, very damp place. And in fact, when we first came to Caldash, I had a lovely osteopathy session with somebody who said, don't move to Caldash. It's a great place, but if you suffer from any kind of dampness or like yeast imbalance or anything like that, it has something a bit like what people have in Bristol in the UK, which is the nasal drip. So
Yes.
as the sun sets, and the sea mist comes in, there's something quite unique to Caldash that gives people a little bit of a runny nose. So yeah, damp is a bit of an issue on the Silver Coast, but also all throughout Portugal. Or you know, from what I've noticed. So the dehumidifier, and what we do first thing in the mornings is we just open our windows wide for a couple of hours, even if it's freezing cold. Now
What's
in
a
the
little
UK,
let all that sea mist in?
well, yeah, but to at least freshen the air and cycle it through. But
Yeah,
like
needs to be.
most of us that are probably listening, if they're in the UK or the US or Australia or something like that, or Canada, you've probably got heating in your homes. And we've in all the homes we've rented, which is quite a lot since we've been in Portugal, we've only had one that really had really good sort of underfloor heating, and the rest were just not quite the same as the heating you'd get in the UK. And so we have our heating on, and so we live in quite dry environments. And so what you'll be smelling now, if you're in the rural parts or even in a place with residencies, is that familiar smell of wood smoke. So people are starting to light their fires already, even if it's actually quite warm. I think the Portuguese are programmed ready to know just to get drying out their insides, not their insides, but the inside of their homes.
So like, it's swallowing sacks of silica gel and drying out. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean something else. If you've got like, I mean, they love their big, thick wardrobes here. They're fitted wardrobes, and if you've got like a guest room and you've got no one staying in it, then just open the doors and leave them open until someone's staying in it, so that there's not these closed off spaces. Because what I've noticed with our wooden doors, where if we move to, once it starts to get into damp season, then the wooden doors start to go darker, and they kind of
It's that bad.
they're actually absorbing little microscopic bits of moisture, and then when the spring comes again, they lighten. So there's all these
Like a
kinds of changes
barometer.
going on.
They're like
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
hygrometer, which measures damp. So yes, yes, it's something to be aware of. Unless, of course, you like that smell, which
Yeah.
many of us may remember from our childhoods of going to stay with a mad aunt or something who never aired her house. And
Mm.
those smells are pretty important part, aren't they, of our childhood? So you might like that, and you might want to accentuate it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you might like that, and if you do, you might want to also add in some mothballs or
Yes,
cabbage soup,
that's right.
which
Have you
is
ever hit a
a
moth?
real favourite here.
I've
What's that?
never managed to hit a moth with a mothball.
No.
There's got to be a better way of dealing with moths than that. Okay, so we're putting this in onto the screen now. This is going to be a regular feature, and you are going to be hosting and co-hosting as well. I think you'll bring your own guests on here. Are there any
Yeah.
requests for Mrs M? Who would you like her to speak to, and when? I'm already feeling a little bit insecure about that, but I'm sure I'll cope. I've got a psychotherapist. I can speak to James on a Monday about any insecurities I have in that department. Feedback coming in. Quails, yum.
Yeah, we haven't eaten them yet, so
No, we haven't. And
they're
you can't
pets as
dip
well.
soldiers into a quail egg. That is true, unless they're those little
They
model.
make really sweet little fried eggs though. They're
They
so cool.
do. They do.
And the
Yes.
kids love making like little smiley faces with 2 eyes and, you know,
Yeah, and you could
whatever
actually
they
get some
want
of
to
those
improvise a smile with.
Palitosh crisps, couldn't you? The little chipstick type, and you could use those and dip those into a quail's egg. But I'm told, and I haven't fact checked this, so please don't get us thrown off Facebook for saying that we think a quail's egg has the same amount of nutrition in it as a hen's egg. But that's supposed to be true, isn't it? It packs a little punch, does the quail's egg?
And that's what the lady in Agrologia told me. So
It must be true then. Fantastic. Okay. Damp, cold conditions in Belfast. Talking about damp this morning. Bad for people with asthma, of course. That's why I love the Algarve. Even December, January, and February, it's warm, drier, milder. The 10-day blast of heat, great for overall health, joints, and chest. Yes. Rossio, also good for your joints as well. And your weather report was it was down to 6 degrees in Belfast last night. Should double that by 1 p.m. Expected high of 13 degrees. Go on, Mrs. M.
I mean, what I would say is, like, you know, if you're actually in Portugal at the moment or planning on coming out, you know, and experiencing an autumn here, I mean, during the day, it's usually really quite warm. I mean, it's raining outside, but you could still just be in, I mean, I'm in a t-shirt with a light cardi. So really all you need to do is not so much hit the heating, but start with the dehumidifier. Once you start dehumidifying, it just dries out and everything feels so much warmer. Because like if you touch the walls, I'm touching this wall now and it feels really cold. But a lot of the internal walls of the way these houses are built, if you touch the walls, they'll really start to feel damp and cold. So you just want to get as much of the damp out. And also, like if you've got like they're quite fond of these rag type rugs here, you know, like these like rugs that you can chuck in your washing machine.
Yes.
They're really quite handy to have on the floors.
Look like they've been made by prisoners, those kinds of rugs.
Yeah, because if you've got tile floors, which I'm guessing lots of you will have here, the tile floors can get a bit sticky, you know, if the humidity gets too much, and then they can actually get quite wet. We actually lived somewhere where we were actually pretty much on the water table, and actually as the water rose up in the winter, our tiles actually started to absorb the water from underneath. So it was at some time, it was almost like having a skating rink, wasn't it, Carl? It was really unpleasant. We just had to put rugs down the whole time and move out of there as soon as we could.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it was like different kind of rising damp coming up and concentrating on the tiles.
I mean, we have experienced a few different situations, it has to be said.
Tile life does, or azalejo life does take a little bit of getting used to. You got to be a bit keener on the wiping. Kids as well. No socks, no running around in socks in the house. And so unforgiving on the mobiles, right? You thought it was bad enough dropping your phone in UK
this is
or
like
US.
horribly scratched and cracked. It's
got
got some more.
Yes, yes.
It's got a few more cracks just from yesterday.
You can get the black lightning on it, as James was saying the other day. So any questions for Mrs. M? Anything you wanted to share with us specifically? I do know that thing that you were talking about, Mrs. M, the first nights of getting into bed and the duvet feels a little bit damp to the touch. That is something to get used to. October is phenomenal in Portimao, best weather of the year. So that nice down there in the Algarve then.
Well, I mean, that is pretty cool actually, because the weather doesn't normally stay damp like throughout the whole of the winter like it would do in the UK. I mean, what you've got is this amazing situation where it does rain and then you get some cheery weather as well. And quite often we get this lovely Indian summer. We have every year we've been here for the last 5 years. And if you get cold in the house, you just need to spend more time outdoors, because these houses are designed to keep the cold out. And they're not so useful in the winter. You know, we live in them very differently to how we might be in the UK.
Absolutely.
And maybe the US.
And so this theme will continue. Gary's working on a series of videos about buying properties here in Portugal and what to look out for, with some useful insights and tips from people who already live here. Watch this space. So proper ventilation of your house. It's a new kind of regime culture to get used to, of airing the house. You remember that when we first arrived here and we just wanted to have all the shutters up and the window's open all of the time. No, that's not what you do, folks, as much as you might be tempted to do so. My counsellor is waiting for me if I suffer from any insecurity, with you taking over the show. I shouldn't probably put it quite like that. So this is a question from Lord Gilchrist. What hasn't he told us? What comes to mind? What I haven't told
Oh, there's
anybody?
so many different things. But I mean, what I'll do is probably I'll just you know, think about the theme of the show. I mean, this kind of fits in really well. So we're talking about mushrooms, you know,
Yeah.
so we're talking about fungus and mold, and then we're talking about the death and dying cycle today.
Yeah.
And you know, cycles of
Getting
change, and
better.
we've just changed seasons, so this is
Yeah.
perfect.
Yes. Okay. You have a request to bring astrologers, please. What is the collective noun for astrologers? An argument, isn't it?
I don't know, probably a rational of astrologers,
A
because a lot
constellation.
of a constellation, that's a good one.
Yes,
A
please.
constellation of astrologers. They can be quite rational.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
they like to look at the sort of the mathematical equations and patterns that astrology creates.
Yes. Oh, serious question now. We'll come back to that. Thanks for all my hole greasing, and finally, I don't think that's for you. And finally, getting the washing open, mate. Mrs. B is also very grateful for G tidying up her bush. Very little vignette
This
of
sounds
life
like a
in there.
personal message.
It does. Sorry, did you mean to send that publicly, Pete? Hey, what was the hardest thing about moving to Portugal for your family that Carl
Yeah.
underestimated? Asking for myself not to embarrass Carl. Thank you very
No,
much.
no, that's a fantastic question, Darren.
It
I really
is.
appreciate you asking that. The hardest thing is actually understanding that when you make one of these massive life changes, everything is harder. Even if you're in a lovely warm place and there's new food and this, that, and the other, the moment you have to do anything that might be slightly tricky, you just need to times it by a factor of maybe 5 or 10, and appreciate that you're under a lot more stress. So when we've had ups, they've been great, but when we've had downs, they've been a lot harder. There's a lot of couples that move out and later their relationships crumble or dissolve. They almost have to reset their expectations because it puts a lot of stress on people. I've noticed a phenomenon, you know, with people when they come out, they initially look like they've had a facelift because they're relaxed and they're in a new country and they're enjoying all of it. But within about 3 months or so, they all start to age quite dramatically. And of course, over the last couple of years, we've had like the COVID thing going on as well.
Mhm.
But I noticed that people, you know, in adapting to a new pace of life, there's all sorts of extra pressures that you just can't quite factor in. And if your relationship doesn't feel as secure, if there's some unspoken parts of your relationship, the additional stress of trying to hold it all together whilst you're in a massive learning curve is extreme.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely say to anyone that's you know, preparing to make a move is get to know your partner as best you can, get to know yourself as best you can, and look at all those parts of you that you're too afraid to go to because they will reveal themselves quite quickly on arrival.
And would you suggest lubricating them as well? Those parts essential
Um,
for external healing.
I just think you've got to get really into a forgiving space with each other as well.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
and
Okay.
if you're moving on your own, it's important to forgive yourself, you know, for not being able to do everything in quite the same way you would at home. Now,
Well said.
funnily enough,
Well said.
Gary was doing a lovely plug for the series that he's doing. I think that's amazing. I'm actually interviewing a lot of people that have been through the migration process, some
Yeah.
who've returned, some who've migrated, not all just to Portugal, but all around the world.
Yeah.
I've got at least 30 people that I'm interviewing about the ups and downs. So if anyone is here that's listening today that wants to share some of their stories with me to go into a bigger series that will help people make a really informed decision and really know if it's for them or not, then give me a shout. It's
Fantastic.
can I use the GMP email or
Yes, of course. Why don't you have
okay?
Louisa at goodmorningportugal.com? How about that?
There you go. I haven't even used it yet, but Louisa at GMP or goodmorningportugal.com.
Yes,
Drop me
indeed.
an email there and I'll set up a recording with you. But yeah, it's a huge thing and it's something that I'm really wanting to explore with people.
Well, who
and
doesn't
help them
like a
through.
huge thing? Who doesn't like a huge thing first thing in the morning? Brian is on WhatsApp. Morning, Carl. Is the morning show cancelled today? No, it's not, Brian. We're on a new channel. We're just sending anyone else who's lost in action here. Can we send them the Good Morning Portugal link? Where's Moaz? Where's Eusebio? Let's send the new channel link to them and make sure they're here for the party as well. Wise words, says Paul. But it all works out. Thanks, Louisa, for answering that question.
Do you know what? It doesn't always all work out.
You see, that's what he doesn't tell you.
Yeah. Like, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I've been speaking to some of these people who've been through this process and who've moved several times. And it doesn't always work out as we're expecting. Though usually a year or two later, we might get the final hindsight of why that particular phase didn't work out because something better was coming along. And a lot of it just depends on your unique worldview. Do you believe that everything does work out for a good reason at the end or not? A lot of it depends on your sort of spiritual or faith, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't always work out. But you do get to learn more about yourself and your relationship with the world, for sure.
Yeah, well, Paul's got some great marriage guidance tips. I have had his counsel on that
Have
subject.
you?
Quick
what,
question.
on our marriage?
I would rather not say. João Oliveira is joining us soon, which is fantastic. I hope you can stick around for that, Mrs M, for a little while at least to meet João. And a quickie then, let's do this again. This has flown by this first half hour. I can't believe it. Do you intend for your little ones to go to any clubs or classes to connect more with the Portuguese kids and learn the language? You're homeschooling, aren't you? Sorry if I got that wrong. What would you say let's generalize that and, the whole thing of getting kids going to classes. We did send them to drama, didn't we? And I think our eldest, there was an exercise, wasn't there? And the drama class leader said, has anyone given anything up? Because they were doing Lent. And our 10-year-old said smoking. That's his strange sense of humor because he's not actually given up smoking, I can assure you.
He's not a smoker.
It does work well, doesn't it, to get him along to those things? But it can be a bit of an effort, and it's a great idea. What would you say?
I'm all for them doing any kind of class that they want and also doing any kind of schooling that they want. Absolutely. I'm not so of the same mindset that you have to integrate in the way that everybody thinks you have to, because if you don't, then you won't integrate. I've lived a lot of my adult life in other countries, not speaking the native language, and integrated just fine. So I think a lot of it's attitude. What I really want for my kids is that they know how to fit in wherever they go. And that they have enough language to do that. And we've got really good coaches around us. We've got really good teachers. I'm also learning with them. I think it's really important that the parents do it with them. If you're expecting kids to go somewhere, but you're not prepared to go there yourself, then it's never going to work. And I also think things happen when they're ready to happen. I think there's a lot of pressure put on kids to get straight into school and then you get that advantage and do this and that and the other. I prefer to do things in a way that work, when my kids are showing a readiness. And I've not been let down yet. What I've noticed is when kids do things at the right time for them, when it feels right for them, when they've got the motivation, then things just go really easy rather than making it a big old fight. So I don't want to kind of punish my kids for us moving out here. And fight them.
That's not the reason you did it.
I don't. I mean, a lot of people have made comments that maybe we're using an independent schooling system just so that we don't have to integrate. But in actual fact, we would be doing the same if we're in the UK. So we're not actually being purposefully different because we're here and we don't want to integrate. It's more that this is actually how we'd be in the UK, or if we're in Finland or in America or anywhere. We just have a preference to be quite close-knit and to really work with our kids and enjoy watching them learn and also have the freedom to learn wherever we go at any time.
There you go. Love the reply.
Yeah, I hope that helps. It's good to get it's good to really clarify it, I think.
Yeah, love the reply. Thanks, Louisa. So we'll do this again.
Hey, Louise.
Here to answer what he doesn't tell you. Great start to that feature, Mrs M. It is 1 minute past 9, so it'll be
We need to get João on, don't we?
We need to get João on for sure. Let's give him a nice round of applause and bring him onto the screen. Woo! All right.